There are similarities between today's case and that of Sammy Josephson. But where Sammy thought it was a normal Uber service she was choosing, today we have a nice gesture that was hiding extremely sinister intent. Today's perpetrator really thought he was the smartest guy in the room when he took advantage of a vulnerable foreign student who spoke very little English. When the police closed in on our antagonist, he soon found out that his evil genius was really just snide and creepy posturing. We're going to 2017 and to Urbana, Illinois to look at the murder of Chinese student Yingying Zhang. This is Murderous Crows. Yingying Zhang was a compassionate, talented and intelligent woman. Born on the 21st of December 1990, she grew up in the Yingying district of Nanping City in the Fujian province of China. Academically prodigious, she sped through school and was immediately recommended to and accepted into Zhongshan University's Environmental Science program, and this was in 2009. Following this, and with her academic potential still awaiting complete fulfillment, Zhang was urged to attend Peking University in 2013, and here she would pursue her master's degree in environmental engineering. Upon completion of her master's degree, Yingying found there was an opportunity to continue her studies abroad and learn from a world-renowned university. And in April 2017, Yingying Zhang chose the University of Illinois to pursue her studies abroad, as she could improve her English, but at that university she would have something of a safety net, because the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana hosted the largest Chinese population of students in the United States.
Yeah, 身边几乎到哪儿都能碰到中国人，无论是在学习还是吃饭的时候。这学期的课一样。我是很喜欢和中国人扎堆儿玩的那种。
Here, the visiting scholar would partake in a research group until the beginning of her PhD program in the following September, so it seemed like an ideal fit for so many reasons. Fellow students gravitated towards Yingying. She was not only smart, but she had many hobbies as well. She enjoyed singing, playing guitar, reading, table tennis, and pretty much would have a go at anything. Always on the go, people wondered how she even found time to sleep. And as well as all of that, she also helped numerous charities around the campus, and would be the first to lend a hand to all of those in need. So she was an all-round good egg and smart cookie who added value to the lives of those who were lucky enough to know her. Now, June the 9th, 2017 started off as a normal day for Yingying. Beginning at Turner Hall on campus, Yingying and other students spent the morning cleaning lab equipment. And as having a background in research, I know this is one of those necessary evils, usually delegated to those relatively new to the lab in question. She was living in the South Campus apartments, known to house married couples, but seemingly used as a stopgap that the housing department hoped would allow the young student to find her feet in the US. And after a couple of months at the university, Yingying was looking to move into the One North apartment, because this would be cheaper rent and would also be closer to where her studies were based. And an appointment was arranged to view a unit and sign a lease at the One North apartment at 1:30 p.m. on the 9th. But Yingying never showed up, and this was extremely out of character for the usually diligent and punctual young lady. Everything had been arranged through text, perhaps to allow for delays with the language barrier. And once Yingying was late, the One North leasing agent sent a text to Yingying asking, "Where are you?" But she never responded. At approximately 4 p.m, her fellow research students were beginning to become concerned for the ever-reliable Chinese student. She had planned to be away for this lease meeting for an absolute maximum of 2 hours, and if running late, she would let somebody know. And for all these reasons, their senses suggested that something wasn't quite right. Her colleagues made numerous attempts to contact Yingying, but none of these efforts were successful. After dinner hours, they returned to the research office in the hopes that Yingying was still busily working at the lab, but the office was quiet and empty. They went to Yingying's apartment to see if she was home, but nobody answered the door. So now, certain that something was wrong, the university police were contacted to help in the search for the missing student. But this being a Friday night, police were uncertain of the severity of this missing person. And University Police Detective Eric Stiverson said at this point, "We have had students go missing in the past, but they're very rare if we don't find them immediately." Numerous of Yingying's colleagues waited among the police department lobby, terrified for the missing friend. Other colleagues waited outside Yingying's apartment until around midnight, but she never showed up. By the next day, when Yingying still hadn't shown up, her friends knew that there was a whole city of both students and non-student residents to reach out to. So they thought that the media would be the most efficient way to reach the highest number of people quickly. And with this in mind, they reached out to the News Gazette. And their genuine concern and fear prompted the news company to run a short article depicting the police searching for Yingying and pleading for anyone to help. Yingying's apartment was searched by university police. Everything appeared completely normal. Nothing seemed to have been tossed around, and all of her clothes appeared to still be there. So the police felt confident that Yingying didn't just skip town unannounced. Nor were there any signs of a struggle at her home. With all of her possessions still in the apartment and the fact that Yingying did not own a car, Detective Stiverson assumed that she would have taken the bus wherever she was going. Now, the mass transit district has approximately 2,000 cameras, resulting in about 10 to 12 cameras per bus. And upon checking the cameras running routes that Yingying may have taken, police discovered an exterior camera with her in view. And at approximately 1:30 p.m, Yingying was seen boarding a bus in front of her apartment. Going further inside the bus, the cameras depicted her walking towards the rear of the cabin and taking a seat, and here she was alone. Shortly into the ride, she exited the bus, presumably to transfer onto another route, and she was seen on the transit cameras attempting to wave down the next bus. But this bus continued to pull away, leaving Yingying stranded at the bus stop where she would presumably have to wait for the next bus. And she is seen on camera waiting at the bus stop just south of University Avenue, having missed that bus and looking quite fraught waiting for the next one. But fortunately for police, cameras on an adjacent parking garage caught the next critical moment. A black sedan was seen turning at the intersection of Yingying's bus stop, circling the block before pulling up next to the Chinese student and rolling down the passenger window. After a brief, maybe 1 minute conversation between Yingying and the driver, she opened the door and disappeared inside the car. After this, she was neither seen nor heard from again. Police now knew that they were not just looking for a student who had wandered off on foot and got lost, or had chosen to disappear. This now seemed more like an abduction. But with the pictures from the camera being very pixelated, it was difficult for police to pinpoint any vehicular details. So the police submitted a request for the FBI to get involved. And FBI Special Agent Anthony Manganaro managed to identify the make and model of the vehicle. And this find actually turned out to be a very real benefit for the authorities, because the car was very rare, that being a Saturn Astra, only being produced and imported into the United States for a short period. The search therefore narrowed right down. A typical vehicle such as a Hyundai Sonata or a Ford Fusion would have approximately 1,000 registrations within Champaign County alone. But with the rarity of the Astra, the entire state of Illinois only had 58 registered. So with this major advancement in the case, the FBI began to search deeper for the owner of this particular Astra. Now, while all of that was going on, a Facebook post by a British student was making an impression on students and the police alike. Emily Hogan had experienced a nerve-wracking experience on the morning of June the 9th, 2017, the same day as Yingying had disappeared. And hours before Yingying's apparent kidnapping, a black sedan similar to the Astra pulled up alongside Emily. And the driver, who was a white male wearing mirrored aviator sunglasses, what a cool guy, rolled down the window and flashed some sort of badge. And the driver claimed to be an undercover police officer and asked Emily to get into the vehicle to answer questions about things that were happening in the area. A bit of a vague suggestion there. Now, she declined and reached out to the police to make them aware that this was something that was happening. So rattled, Emily made a post on Facebook that spread throughout the campus Facebook sites, warning others, don't get into the car even if they claim to be police or have some sort of badge. And speculation that came much later suggested that if Yingying had just happened to open Facebook, there is a chance that she would have never gotten into the car, but of course hindsight is always 20/20. As university police and the FBI pursued their investigation into locating the vehicle, their starting point of 58 registered cars in the state became narrowed down to only 18. Now, at the same time, Yingying's family arrived from China to frantically perform their own search for Yingying. And at this point, Crime Stoppers issued a $40,000 reward for any information leading to the return of Yingying. Back to the police, and upon contacting the 18 persons of interest who owned the model and make of vehicle in question, police ran into a dead end. There didn't seem to be anything there worth following up, so hope was faltering. But then University Police Sergeant James Carter asked detectives if he could offer any assistance. And it would be this particular officer's stubbornness and determination that would actually lead to the next step forward for the investigation. And on the 14th of June, Officer Carter reviewed the video segment of the suspect vehicle driving off with Yingying inside it. And what Carter did was loop that video and watch it again and again and again and again for many, many minutes. And it was through doing this that the sergeant noticed that the front passenger wheel seemed to have damage to the hubcap. And through even more viewings, Carter was able to realise that the vehicle appeared to have a large sunroof. So the FBI, now armed with these two other small pieces of information, began to refine the vehicle search for Astras that had damage to the front passenger wheel or hubcap and a large sunroof. And going through notes from prior interviews with the persons of interest who had that car, special agents realised that the very first person of interest interviewed had an Astra with a large sunroof. And upon the initial interview, this particular subject appeared calm, cooperative, and told investigators he spent the day in question at home playing video games, as so many of us do when we have free time. Agent Manganaro sent agents back out to this particular person's apartment with a team of investigators to have a little looky look at the front passenger side wheel and hubcap of this car. And minutes later, Manganaro receives a photograph of a broken hubcap. So it seems that the specific Astra in question had now been found. So the police and FBI have now identified the owner of the Astra and therefore suspect in the kidnapping as Brent Christensen. Now Christensen was 27 years old. He was a married man and he had just completed a master's program at the university, and this was within the physics department. And in that department he was also a teaching assistant who was liked by his colleagues and well respected by the students. Being married and having no criminal history or police contact made Brent Christensen the last person that anyone would expect to be involved when compared to the assumed suspect profile. So there was nothing about him that suggested he would be involved in anything like this. With a search warrant, police and FBI agents closed in on Christensen's apartment on June the 15th. The man himself, when approached by the officers, appeared subtly surprised and overwhelmingly calm. No alarm bells going off at this point. Among one of the first things found were a pair of mirrored aviator sunglasses, the same as Emily Hogan had described to the police. But of course, that's just a pair of sunglasses. and that's common enough just to be a coincidental find at this man's home. Agent Manganaro asked Christensen if he would voluntarily accompany them to the office, and Detective Stevenson and Agent Manganaro drove Christensen to the office for a voluntary interview, explaining to Christensen that he could terminate the interview at any time. Now, the young man agreed to answer some questions, and Christensen began to effectively repeat his previous statement to investigators that he was alone at home playing video games. At that interview, Christensen did not show any sign of concern at why he was being questioned in the early hours of the morning, so he didn't seem alarmed despite the late hour. Now, the police knew that Christensen could leave at any time, but they still chose to play the good cop, bad cop routine. And despite these two officers not being known to each other, they seemed to work well in opposition to each other.
Again, this is a voluntary interview, so at any time you're done, we'll drive you back home. That's the end of it. But just kind of given that it's late and stuff like that, abundance of caution. All right, so before we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions. So I'm trying to read upside down. You have the right to have a lawyer with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questioning if you wish. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you have the right to stop answering questions at any time. If you understand these rights, if you have any questions about these rights, ask now, ask anytime. If you do wish to talk, you can sign. I'll sign as a witness, and we'll go from there.
I'm willing to answer questions. It's some questions. Obviously, I don't know.
Yeah, if I ask you a question and you're like, hey, I don't want to answer that, but I'll answer other ones.
Yeah.
Again. Alright, it is like 7 minutes after.
Why am I under suspicion? Is it just my car, or is there anything else?
I mean, that's, a large portion. I mean, it is a very unique car. Like I said, our search warrant is just for the car.
Yeah.
So we can, look into it. We can, of course, see what we can find. And, of course, you could also turn around and exonerate you completely. I mean, we're talking about a very rare car.
Yeah.
So, how long were you at the U of I? Did you undergrad there as well?
No, I did my undergrad at UW-Madison.
Okay.
And I came here in 2013.
Okay.
I was initially in the PhD program, but decided I didn't want a PhD, so I just kind of left with the master's.
Got it. You like the campus?
It's all right.
Not too bad.
It's all right.
Do you meet your wife there? Or?
No, we actually grew up in the same hometown. Didn't really know each other until end of high school. So we both moved to Madison when I went to undergrad, and then we both moved here.
Cool. Did she study here as well?
No, she did not.
Yeah, when we were talking about Friday, the day in question on the night, can you remember, you said you played video games all day on Friday?
Yeah.
Is it just between the time period that he's asking about, or just literally all day?
Literally all day. At the moment, not really hanging out with too many people or talking to too many people. My wife and the girl I talked to, she was busy. My wife was out of town, so it's like, well, I'm alone today. So, yeah.
You didn't go cruising campus or anything?
I did on Saturday, but I mean, getting a little stir crazy, just decided to go out for a drive on Saturday. But
did you go out to eat or anything? Go any places?
No, I didn't go out to eat.
What other vehicles you guys own?
We own a 2000 Camaro as well.
That's right. Is that one primarily yours or your wife's?
It's primarily mine.
Really?
So.
Is that the car that she took on the road trip, or how did she go on a road trip?
The other person's car. It was her and another person. So I'll typically drive the Camaro. The vast majority of the time when I'm doing errands, I'll take the Saturn because it's
probably
the
better
Camaro sucks for errands.
Yeah, exactly. Groceries
So,
and everything.
Yeah, but the Camaro's mine.
You know that we didn't bring you all the way up here to talk about video games and what you had for lunch that day.
Yeah.
Why do you think that we brought you up here?
Because the car I own was seen picking up a girl that's missing.
Yeah. So who was driving that car other than you on Friday night? On Friday the 9th. You're driving your car on the 9th, weren't you?
Does anybody else have access to that car?
No one has access to that car.
Okay.
So how many sets of keys do we have to that car?
2.
And where were they on the Friday?
One. I would have had one. My wife would have had one.
And hers were in Wisconsin, right? Yeah. And what do you keep on that keychain? You keep both sets of keys, right? One for the Camaro, or do you have separate sets?
I have one keychain, but sometimes I take the Camaro keys off of it. So.
Now let's talk specifically about Friday. Okay. You went to school for how long at the U of I?
Since 2013.
Since 2013.
Yeah, so you're very familiar with our campus.
Not really. I never really talked to anyone. So
you're kind of a loner?
Yeah.
And you would have went to Loomis Lab, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my name. Okay. That and the attached films.
But specifically on that day, okay, when you originally told the agents that came to your apartment that you just played video games all day long. And you didn't leave the apartment.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that we know that that's not true, correct?
Why would I lie? I mean,
maybe there's some misunderstanding why we're here. Because, like I said, we're not just looking for a needle in a haystack. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. We are looking for a needle in a haystack. Yeah. But my point is, you're making it sound like we just randomly came across your vehicle of the 1,400 Astros that are in the state of Illinois.
I have.
So what would have happened that day that brings us to you?
Probably that I live in Champaign. I mean, I've never seen one before, an Astro. So.
Okay.
No, well. Believe me when I say that the full weight and force of the FBI is going to descend on that vehicle. And all that entails. Okay. Right now, my primary concern and why I've been out till midnight, and these guys have been out till midnight every single night, is we're trying to find this girl.
And you've been at the U of I for how long?
3 years.
And that you know what we do? I work in the Detectives Bureau at the U of I, and you know what we have access to? Cameras, Do you think that we're not going to track a vehicle all over campus? We control kiosks to bus stops. We can look in buses. We can look in every building out on the streets. And you're telling me that I didn't see you driving your car on Goodwin? That I didn't see you driving down Wright Street and turning on right in front of parking where everybody pays their tickets and driving down University to Goodwin and heading south? And then you see her standing on that corner in that shade tree, didn't you? That's where you first saw her. And then you turned on Clark, and we still have cameras.
I've seen videos. I didn't see me.
You've seen what we've allowed you to see.
Can I see this stuff that you're talking about?
Do you think that we brought you up here to show you video? We want to understand why you did it.
Yeah.
We want to understand why you stopped her to pick her up. Was it to give her a ride? Are you afraid to tell us that you gave her a ride? Maybe you wanted to make a couple bucks as an Uber driver, and she told you I had to go sign a lease at 1 North, and you're like, oh, I know where that's at. I'll drop you off. If you're afraid to tell us that you gave her a ride someplace, we can work with you there. But I know that you picked her up. I know you did. I saw you in your shirt, arms fully extended. Where did you drop her off at? She was looking for a ride. She had missed her bus. She told you she was going to 1 North, so where did you drop her off at?
Saturday. I did pick a girl up. I don't remember where.
Okay.
I saw her picture. I don't think it was her, though.
Do you remember the girl's name that you picked up?
No, she was talking very broken English.
Okay. Tell us about what happened. What time of day was that?
Early afternoon. I don't really remember.
Okay.
I was just driving around. I saw a girl, and she was very distressed.
Okay.
So I stopped my car and looked at her. I asked her if she needed help. I talked to her for a little bit, not much. I gave her a short ride, a couple blocks.
Okay.
She freaked out and got out.
Okay.
And that's all it was.
Was this when you got on the north side of the railroad tracks on Goodwin? When you went across the University and you drove on north? Did you let her out by the hospital or by the railroad tracks? Or where did you let her out at?
I don't really remember specifics.
Was it close to where you picked her up?
Yeah, it was relatively close. It was in a residential area.
Okay.
So I'd never really been over there before. I had no reason to.
Okay.
I mean,
when you say she freaked out, what did she do? Did she start throwing things at you? Did she scratch you? It looks like you have a scratch on your right bicep there. Is that from...
I scratched myself in my sleep. That's from me.
Okay. So she just freaked out. So she's sitting in the front passenger seat of your vehicle? Okay. Has anybody else sat in that front passenger seat since she got out of the car?
Probably.
Okay.
Not with me, but with my wife, probably. I mean...
So other than your wife, who else sat in
her.
the front passenger seat with you that you know?
Maybe a guy she's hanging out with.
Your wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think it was her.
If it's her, not again.
Okay.
I want to find this girl because I know she's alone and scared out there, and we don't have any contact with her. So you said you picked her up.
Yeah.
You went a couple blocks away into a residential area. Do you remember if you went north?
I went north for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I know my criminal directions in the city.
Yeah. Okay. So you went north.
So that was relatively close to Loomis. So.
All right. To where?
It was relatively close to Loomis. I'm so
Loomis?
familiar with that area.
Where you dropped her off or where you picked her up?
Where I picked her up. So I'm serious when I say I'm pretty antisocial. I pretty much just go to Loomis area, that parking lot there, and then go home.
Okay.
But I knew my general area, and I don't remember exactly where I was.
Okay, where did you drop her off at?
There's a residential area, I guess a little north of Loomis.
The same street you picked her up from, right?
Yeah, north of that place.
That would be Goodwin Avenue that you were on.
Okay. So...
And you're facing north when she gets in the car.
Showed me her phone, and I was like, broken English, she said, I'm going here.
So she was showing your phone like a maps program?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I saw it was north, so I started driving north, and she said something like, turn left after a couple blocks. Maybe she said something else, because that's really when she started freaking out.
With overwhelming evidence proving that Christensen's vehicle was the one that picked up Yingying, Christensen went into a long moment of silence, and he began to show physical signs of discomfort and indeed hyperventilation. So maybe the man had been broken. The silence broke, and Christensen stated, "Maybe I'm getting my days mixed up." And he realized that his story about being home alone was falling apart. He followed this up with the following statement. "I thought I drove around on Saturday. I know I picked a girl up. I don't remember where. I saw her picture," referring to Yingying, "and don't think it was her though." And Detective Stevenson pushed for the girl's name, and the experienced interviewers started to pull at the edges of Christensen's story with a view to pulling it apart completely. And this was where Christensen said she was speaking very broken English, and then ultimately admitted to picking up an Asian female early afternoon on June the 9th, 2017. He continued elaborating on how distressed she seemed to be, admitted to talking briefly, and then her getting into the car. Christensen claimed that he drove a relatively short distance before Yingying freaked out and exited the car. Agent Manganaro asked Christensen where he took her, imploring him that we need to find Yingying tonight. At this point, Christensen responded, "I think it's time I stop answering questions. I know the typical advice is to get a lawyer before you answer anything, and I think I've helped enough." Sounds more like somebody who needs someone to help him get out of the hole that he's dug for himself, but that's just my opinion. Christensen was arrested for making a false statement to the FBI, this effectively just being an excuse to hold him, and he was detained for 24 hours. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Eugene Miller actually didn't want to hold him and continue with the charge because he felt that releasing him would give them the opportunity to put surveillance on Christensen and hopefully then lead them closer to finding Yingying Zhang. Investigators used the information that they had found out digging through Christensen's domestic life to perhaps find a way of infiltrating his inner circle. In terms of that history, after a period of alcohol abuse, Christensen's wife, Michelle, had given him an ultimatum. He could either follow through with their divorce, or they could partake in an open marriage. Never works in my opinion, but there we go. Now, wanting to salvage the marriage, he decided to go for the option of an open marriage. And Michelle had a boyfriend, and Christensen had a girlfriend who was named Tara Bullis. And Bullis was approached in the hope that she could help authorities to get information to find the missing student. And she agreed to wear a wire and speak to Brent Christensen. Over the next couple of days, numerous recordings were captured, and at one point on the young lady's front porch, Christensen is captured stating, "I'm going to go talk to one of the FBI agents. I don't want to. I want to clear my name." Now, on June the 17th, Christensen sits down to interview again, and he agrees to go for a ride with agents and attempt to point out the residential area where he dropped Yingying off. But this was to prove to be a false dawn for investigators, because Brent Christensen, again being somewhat narcissistic, thought that he could fool the authorities, and ultimately investigators were led on a wild goose chase by Christensen on this drive, suggesting that this aspect of the drive was actually fake. And his attempts to clear his name had therefore made him more suspicious. But there was still no concrete evidence, and time continued to roll forward with no sign of Yingying. On June the 29th, 2017, a vigil was held on campus in honor of Yingying Zhang. Countless people gathered with hopes of bringing her home and sending much love out into the world. Brent Christensen attended the vigil with his girlfriend, who, unknown to him, was an FBI informant at this point, Tara Bullis, and he was secretly consuming alcohol throughout the whole evening. And this was when Bullis's wire captured Christensen stating, "I wanted to see how many people would be here for me." And he said this during the walk, which is a strange thing to say. Why would they be there for him? As the vigil ended with a concert and the crowd stood in applause, Christensen remained seated while performing a slow, dramatic clap. You know, he was just being a bit of a knob by the sound of it. And their conversation that was captured on the wire went something like this. Christensen said she was valiant, she was. And Bullis replied, "She was?" "Yeah," said Christensen. Bullis asked, "Did she fight?" And Christensen replied simply, "Uh-huh." And then he went on to say, "Nobody knows what happened except for me." And perhaps in an effort to comfort him, the girlfriend replies, "Nobody will know what happened." To which Christensen said, "I am the only one." Following this up with, "They'll never find her. The family, you know, they'll leave empty-handed because no one will ever know where she is." Extremely haunting words there. God bless alcohol as a truth serum. And as Bullis sat with the investigators going over the recording they had captured, they realized that Christensen had confessed to her what had happened to Yingying. So the plan had worked. Using the inside man or woman, they gathered their evidence, and on June the 30th, Brent Christensen was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder.
因为到现在已经4个多月，快5个月了，就是我们还是没有听到任何关于尹位置的尹下落的消息，确实等得太着急了。学校和当地华人其实对我们的帮助都特别的大，我们这可能是确实是不幸中的万幸，就是我们来到香槟这里有这么多的华人来帮助我们。其实我们完全无法想象，如果要是没有其他人帮助我们，我们该怎么过下去？
阿姨对您来讲，
对阿姨是想帮陈焕，真的我想杀了他，我真的很难受。确实我有点这样的想法，但是我还要一想，那是他妈妈会来，我想跟他妈妈谈一谈。他妈妈也是一个当一个妈妈的，心里也是很痛的，你说是不是啊？所以我想叫他妈妈跟他孩子好好的谈一谈。
教的一点就是那个他从小就知道努力学习，长大了或者是有一些对家里人啊，或者是社会上的人啊，也有一些那个有一些报答性的这样子。
我真的很难过，我晚上睡几个小时，想把眼睛没有睡觉了，一直在做梦，我的女儿在哪里？
我女儿是无缘无故的跟他，因不跟他认识，无缘无故的跟他伤害掉。你说这个属于他，就说我们哪里接受得了？是不是？在这里反正待了一天，像待1年一样的，非常非常难受。
Nearly 2 years later, on June the 12th, 2019, at the start of the trial, the defence's opening statement admitted to Christensen killing Yingying and basing it off his mental health issues, clearly laying the groundwork for an attempt at an insanity plea. A search of Christensen's phone would lead the prosecution to exhibit searches for abduction 101, perfect abduction fantasy, and planning a kidnapping. And this clearly showed that Christensen had premeditated efforts in this regard, and he discussed in an abduction thread his detailed fantasy of a staged abduction. including placing the female in a large duffel bag and placing it in his vehicle. And he would soon purchase a similar duffel bag on Amazon. So these were thoughts that he'd had whirling around in his mind for some considerable time, and his computer searches backed that up. Further searching of the Christensen apartment had discovered a wooden baseball bat with Yingying's blood on it, and clearly he had used this to beat her after he brought her to his apartment. Traces of her blood were found using luminol in other areas of the apartment as well. It was almost supernatural how she just didn't give up, Christensen is quoted as saying at the trial. First attempting to choke Yingying, followed by rape, stabbing, and beating her to death with a baseball bat, before he ultimately dismembered Yingying's body and placed her in 3 separate trash bags. Oh, the indignity, what a prick. Christensen claims to have put the 3 bags in 3 separate dumpsters surrounding his apartment complex. Yingying's remains were not found and have never been found to this day. Comparing himself to Ted Bundy, as he would, being a prick and a narcissist, Christensen alleged that Yingying was his 13th victim, leaving 12 unknown victims that had come before her. But defense, prosecution, and psychologists found absolutely no evidence substantiating his claims. A cockwomble with delusions of grandiosity, I would think. Christensen was charged and tried federally, which allowed the prosecution to seek the federal death sentence, since any other type of prosecution, given the location, would preclude the death penalty, since Illinois had banned the death penalty for any state prosecutions. On June the 24th, 2019, the 12-member jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding Christensen guilty on 1 count of kidnapping resulting in a death and 2 counts of making false statements to the FBI. Naughty, naughty boy.
Yeah, Eric, a step towards justice, but the family says they still can't even imagine the rest of their lives without Yingying. It took the jury less than 2 hours to decide Brent Christensen is guilty of kidnapping resulting in death and 2 counts of lying to investigators. In a heartbreaking moment, Yingying Zhang's mother broke down in tears outside the courthouse, saying she wants to find her daughter and bring her home. Yingying's father says there is no language that can describe our pain and suffering. The family sat through 8 days of gruesome testimony and evidence, including photos of bloodstains on Brent Christensen's bed and a recording of Christensen describing in graphic detail how he killed Yingying. Christensen has not said what he did with Yingying's remains, and investigators have not found her body.
Our wish has always been to find Yingying and bring her home. Will not give up.
In closing arguments today, Christensen's defense attorney told the jury she expected them to find him guilty. His lawyers have admitted since day one of the trial that he kidnapped and killed Zhang. Their strategy has been to paint him as a man with mental health and alcohol problems who does not deserve the death penalty. The same jury will decide next month whether Christensen will be executed.
We'll leave that to the jury. We think the trial, the process eventually is going to bring justice for Yingying and the Zhang family.
That sentencing phase will start up July 8th. Illinois abolished the death penalty years ago, but since this is a federal case, it is a possible punishment here. Christensen was mostly expressionless, looking at the floor in front of him as the judge read that verdict. Live in Peoria, Tim McNicholas, CBS 2 News.
But despite the overwhelming physical and circumstantial evidence, the jury could not unanimously agree to the death penalty. And so on July the 18th, 2019, Christensen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is currently serving his sentence in McCreary Prison in Pine Knot, Kentucky, and long may he rot the vile cockwomble. A small garden on the University of Illinois Urbana campus now memorializes Yingying Zhang. More than 100 people turned out for a dedication ceremony for this garden, during which a dedication stone was unveiled. This garden is located near a bus stop, and this was the bus stop that showed Yingying getting into a car on June the 9th, 2017, and of course that was the last time that she was seen. Shortly after the incident happened, well-wishers began decorating a tree near to the bus stop with flowers, photos, teddy bears and other items in memory of Yingying Zhang. And while those decorations did continue to this tree near to the bus stop, the garden was opened as a more permanent tribute. University Chancellor Robert Jones told the gathering at the dedication ceremony, "People may not know necessarily that it's Yingying's garden. They may not see the dedication stone. But this space will truly be a profound space that brings a bit of joy and a bit of peace at the same time." The dedication stone has Yingying Zhang's name written in both English and Chinese. Yingying Zhang's family vividly remembers journeying to the university when she first went missing, with her father Ronggao Zhang saying, "We didn't even know how to get to Illinois. When we first arrived in Champaign, we didn't know anyone. Everything was challenging and overwhelming. We were scared. Champagne is 7,000 miles away from our home. We didn't know who and where to ask for help. The university and local communities rallied around the Zhang family, providing them housing, food, transportation, and even legal assistance as they began their personal journey to find answers about what happened to Yingying. In August of 2019, the family and the university jointly announced the creation of Yingying's Fund, an endowed fund to support international students and their families in times of crisis. And to this end, the Zhang family provided a $30,000 donation to start the fund. And the Zhangs said they wanted to do this in recognition of the community support they received during their grieving, and in tribute of Yingying, who herself was very quick to help others in need. Yingying's father went on to say, "Our sadness and grief at losing Yingying will be with us forever. I cannot describe the pain we suffer as we cannot take her home to China. We hope no other family ever experiences the tragedy that we endured. However, we know there will be other international students and families facing hardship and loss when they are far away from home. It is our hope that this fund will offer some support and help when they are dealing with an accidental and urgent situation." And that was the tragic story of a foreign student who had travelled to the US with hopes of bettering herself, and finding only lies, violence, and betrayal that ended her life at the painfully young age of just 26. She was the victim of a vile, vindictive, and selfish cockwomble who felt his needs were more important than anyone else's. And those needs involved taking advantage of a vulnerable, trusting student just to meet his depraved and deviant needs. She was hugely valued by family and friends, and her loss was a devastating blow to them, and indeed to the wider communities that she impacted, both in the US and in China. This video is dedicated to Yingying Zhang, who was destined to make a positive difference in the world before her very premature death. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. Please like, share and subscribe and do all that good stuff if you want to. I'm not your mother. I'm Steve. This monster is Samson. And we will see you when we see you.
Say that you're ready, but you won't like it. You say that